Blazing Saddles has always been known as one of the boldest comedies ever made. Loud, outrageous, wildly inappropriate, and somehow brilliant. When it exploded into theaters in 1974, audiences didn't quite know what they were watching. Some people laughed so hard they could barely breathe. Others walked out in shock. Critics argued about it for years. But even after half a century, one strange detail in the film went almost completely unnoticed. A blooper. Not a small one. Not a quick mistake hidden in the background. A moment so bizarre that once you see it, it becomes impossible to ignore. And yet millions of viewers watched the film for decades without realizing it was there. But the truth is that blooper is only part of the story. Because behind the chaos of Blazing Saddles lies one of the most unpredictable productions in Hollywood history, full of casting disasters, secret deleted scenes, studio panic, and a director who refused to back down even when everyone around him thought the movie would destroy his career. To understand how that blooper ended up in the final film, you first have to understand the madness that created Blazing Saddles in the first place. When Mel Brooks began working on the film in the early 1970s, Hollywood was still dominated by traditional westerns. For decades, these movies had painted the American frontier as a heroic place filled with brave white cowboys, noble gunfights, and simple stories of good versus evil. The formula was familiar, predictable. Brooks had no interest in any of that. Instead of celebrating the Western myth, he wanted to destroy it. The result was Blazing Saddles, a movie that took every expectation audiences had about Western films and turned it completely upside down. The story followed a clever and calm black sheriff named Bart, played by Cleavon Little, who is appointed to lead a small frontier town called Rock Ridge. The appointment is meant to be a cruel trick. A greedy politician believes the town's racist residents will panic and abandon their homes once they learn a black man is in charge. But Bart isn't the fool they expected. He's smarter than everyone around him. And what begins as a scheme quickly turns into a chaotic rebellion against corruption, racism, and the ridiculous traditions of the Western genre itself. At first glance, the movie looks like pure slapstick comedy. Characters fall down stairs, people punch horses, and cowboys sit around campfires making the most infamous bathroom jokes in film history. But beneath the ridiculous humor was something far more dangerous. Blazing Saddles was attacking racism directly. Not gently. Not politely. Directly. And in 1974, that was incredibly risky. The script itself was written by a team that included Mel Brooks and the fearless comedian Richard Pryor. Pryor's influence on the story was enormous. His sharp, confrontational comedy shaped the character of Sheriff Bart and helped push the film's satire far beyond what Hollywood had ever attempted before. In fact, Pryor was originally supposed to play Bart himself. But there was a problem. The studio refused. At the time, Richard Pryor had a reputation for unpredictable behavior and struggles with harmful substances. Warner Brothers executives decided they couldn't insure him for the production, which meant he legally couldn't be hired as the lead actor. It was a crushing decision. Pryor remained involved as a writer, but the role went instead to Cleavon Little, a Broadway actor who had almost no film experience. And yet that unexpected casting decision may have saved the movie. Little brought a quiet confidence to Sheriff Bart. Instead of playing the character with explosive anger, he delivered his lines with calm intelligence and dry humor. The contrast made the satire even sharper. While the townspeople panicked and shouted, Bart stayed composed, watching everyone else expose their own stupidity. But casting problems were only just beginning. Another major role in the film, the Waco Kid, was originally given to actor Gig Young, an Academy Award winner known for dramatic roles. On paper it seemed like a perfect fit. The Waco Kid was a legendary gunslinger who had fallen into alcoholism and lived alone in the town jail. But on the first day of filming, disaster struck. Young collapsed on set. His struggle with alcohol was far worse than the producers had realized, and production had to stop almost immediately. Mel Brooks was furious. The movie was already controversial enough without losing actors mid-production. So Brooks made a desperate phone call. He called Gene Wilder. Wilder had worked with Brooks before on The Producers, and the two trusted each other completely. Brooks explained the situation and asked if Wilder could fly out immediately to take over the role. Wilder agreed. Within a day he was on set. And his performance as the Waco Kid would become one of the most beloved parts of the entire film. Wilder played the character with a strange mixture of wisdom, silliness, and quiet sadness. His chemistry with Cleavon Little gave the movie an emotional core beneath the chaos. But chaos was exactly what Mel Brooks wanted. He encouraged improvisation on set. Actors were allowed to experiment with lines, react naturally, and sometimes even break the rules of the script. Brooks believed that comedy worked best when it felt unpredictable. Nowhere is that philosophy clearer than in one of the most famous scenes in the movie, the campfire scene. In the scene, a group of cowboys sit around eating beans. For a moment everything seems normal. Then one of them passes gas. Then another. Then another. Soon the entire group is creating a ridiculous symphony of fart noises echoing across the prairie. It sounds childish today, but at the time it was revolutionary. No major Hollywood film had ever used flatulence as a comedic centerpiece before. The studio executives were horrified. They begged Brooks to remove the scene. He refused. And audiences loved it. But even that outrageous moment wasn't the most shocking thing that almost appeared in the film. Because there was another scene that most people never saw. A deleted scene involving the glamorous villainous Lily Von Shtupp and Sheriff Bart. In the final film, their interaction is playful and suggestive, but the original version pushed things much further. In the deleted version, Lily asks Bart a very direct question about the stereotype that black men are unusually well endowed. The joke was meant to expose the ridiculousness of the stereotype while flipping it into absurd comedy. The punchline? Bart calmly reveals that she's not actually touching what she thinks she is. She's holding his arm. The joke was bold, uncomfortable, and incredibly risky. Even Mel Brooks hesitated. In later interviews, Brooks admitted he ultimately decided the scene crossed a line. The film was already pushing boundaries and he worried that particular joke might overshadow everything else. So it was removed. Still, even without that scene, Blazing Saddles remained one of the most daring comedies ever released. And yet the biggest surprise in the film wasn't a joke at all. It was a mistake. Near the end of the movie, the story completely breaks the fourth wall. The characters leave the fictional town of Rock Ridge and begin fighting across the Warner Brothers studio lot itself. Cowboys crash through movie sets, interrupt a musical number, and eventually spill out into the real streets of Hollywood. The sequence is pure chaos. Actors run everywhere. Props are flying. Extras are chasing each other through the studio gates. And then something unexpected happens. As the crowd bursts out of the studio and into the street, a man wearing a sweater casually walks through the shot. He isn't dressed like a cowboy. He isn't in costume. He's not reacting to the fight happening around him. He simply walks across the frame like a normal pedestrian. Because that's exactly what he was. A random passerby. Somehow, during filming, a real person wandered into the middle of the shot while cameras were rolling. No one had stopped him because the crew was focused on the huge action scene. The moment was captured on film. Most directors would have removed it immediately. But Mel Brooks saw something different. He laughed. Instead of cutting the shot or reshooting the scene, Brooks decided to leave the man in the movie. The confusion on the pedestrian's face only made the scene funnier. It perfectly matched the film's chaotic style. So the stranger stayed. And just like that, an accidental walk-on became part of cinematic history. For decades, audiences watched Blazing Saddles without noticing him. The chaos of the scene distracted everyone. There were so many jokes, stunts, and ridiculous moments happening at once that the random pedestrian blended into the madness. Only years later did viewers begin pointing it out. And once you see him, you can't unsee it. But in many ways, that accidental moment perfectly represents what made Blazing Saddles special. The film was never meant to feel polished. It was supposed to feel wild, messy, unpredictable. Even the studio that financed the film didn't believe in it. When Warner Brothers executives first watched the finished movie, many of them sat silently in shock. They thought it was too offensive, too vulgar, too strange for mainstream audiences. One executive reportedly predicted it would end Mel Brooks' career. The studio initially planned a quiet release, hoping the film would disappear quickly. Instead, the opposite happened. Audiences packed theaters. Word spread rapidly. People returned to watch it again and again. By the end of its run, Blazing Saddles had become the biggest comedy hit of the year, earning more than $100 million worldwide. The movie that nearly scared the studio to death had become a cultural phenomenon. And today, it remains one of the most influential comedies ever made. Its fearless satire inspired generations of filmmakers. Movies that break the fourth wall, push social boundaries, or mix absurd humor with serious commentary all owe something to the chaotic genius of Blazing Saddles. And somewhere inside that chaos, a random pedestrian still walks calmly through the background. A tiny mistake in a movie built entirely on breaking the rules. Which might be exactly why Mel Brooks left it there. Because sometimes the funniest moments in comedy aren't planned at all. Sometimes they just wander into the shot.